Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable with our partner, the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Today is Saturday, June 18th, 2022. June is LGBTQ plus Pride Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. We have our executive producer, Glenda Smith, and the digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have our partners on the line with us today, Kathryn Monet, who's the Chief Executive Officer for the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Ralph Cooper, he's a Community and Residential Veteran Services Coordinator for Cloudbreak Houston LLC and co-founder of the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, and Anthony Love, Senior Advisor and Director of Community Engagement for the Department of Veterans Affairs and Veterans Healthcare Administration for the Homeless Program. How are you guys doing today?
Wonderful.
Doing well. Thank you.
So there's an agenda on the line. You guys want to house 38,000 veterans by the end of 2022. How is that going to get done?
That's going to be done by a lot of hard work, collaboration, engaging all of government as well as our community partners, like the ones that are on the line today.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but about 50,000 veterans roughly across the country are homeless in any given day. Is that correct?
So roughly about 37,000.
Okay.
There's been roughly 50% decrease in those veterans that have experienced homelessness since 2010.
Now, how has that success been accomplished, the decrease in homelessness?
Sure. So the way that this success has been engaged is leadership, resources, and partnerships. Leadership from the vantage point that in 2010, the Obama administration put forward a federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness with one of its goals to end veteran homelessness. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and my co-guest will correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the first time that a comprehensive plan was put in place with an effort to end veteran homelessness. And then we went about engaging local leaders and state leaders, and communities rallied together to begin to input best practices like housing first, ensuring that veterans get housed rapidly, but also have the necessary services wrapped around them so that they could maintain their housing. And then collecting data, actually looking at our progress and tracking that progress. And so with all of that effort put forth, you began to see the numbers of veterans experiencing homelessness fall, which we've had great success, but not ready to spike the football yet. That's one of the reasons this secretary has put forth this aggressive goal of housing 38,000 veterans by the end of the year to continue that downward trend of veterans experiencing homelessness.
Now, Ms. Monet, one thing I've read also too is that veterans, surprisingly, and I really can't get my head around this, are more likely to experience homelessness than general population. So, can you speak to that, and also give us some information as to what's going on? Why are veterans getting into this trap of homelessness?
Well, so there are a lot of reasons that someone falls into homelessness, right? And some of the reasons for veterans are the same as civilians, right? I mean, at the crux of it, it's a housing market that doesn't have a lot of affordable housing, and then an individual's ability to afford the housing in that market, right? And so there are kind of these push and pull things at play. But when you think about the individual's ability to afford housing, some of the challenges that may be different for veterans relate to, their military service, right? When you think about the fact that certain veterans are experiencing MST in ways that civilians may not be, or certain veterans are, deploying multiple times. When you think about just the op tempo right now for the current veteran or the current generation of veterans, it's very different than it was previously. And so you think about the ways that can impact a person and their ability to really thrive and function in society. And, it's just a fact, unfortunately, but I think a fact that a lot of us are working really hard to prevent. I do think one of the really interesting things about this administration and this current effort to end homelessness is that it's not only focused on crisis response, right? Where in prior years and prior administrations, we've been heavily focused on how do we address people who are experiencing homelessness right now today. And that's still a big driver and a main focus. But what I'm hearing out of this administration is that there will be a lot more looking at how we prevent homelessness, and not just how the homelessness system prevents homelessness, but kind of a whole of government approach to how you really wrap services around people and understand the drivers of homelessness so that people aren't falling into homelessness in the first place.
And Mr. Cooper, so tell me a little bit about your experience as far as the successes that you've seen personally in getting people off the street, particularly veterans.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. We house approximately 500 previously homeless veterans, and among them are also some non-veterans. But the success is with the services that we provide. One of the things that you cannot do with a single homeless person is to exclude the family. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do is to reach out to the family and make the family a part of the treatment process, reconnecting veterans with estranged family members and children and even friends. Isolation, when you're out there in the streets, you're kind of your one-man show. You're isolated, but you may be in with a bunch of people who don't have your best interest at heart. And so now that you come off of the street, you're into your own place, there's a lot of things that you have to relearn. One of the big things is what I call living skills training. We have to reconnect with a veteran to teach him how to use the stove and cook his own meal, how to keep his place clean. And of course, the elephant in the room is pay your rent and pay it on time to keep from ending up being evicted. And so with all of these things in mind, at Cloudbreak, we have the fortunate ability to utilize the VA through the VASH program. We have VA case managers right on our premises, so that the veteran who happens to be on VASH, which is, I think last count was somewhere around 200 and between 200 and 220 of the these are people who are getting some assistance with their rent through the VASH program, and this is a real big help for them. They don't have to try to figure out how to get to the VA or how to meet there. They can meet their case manager right on site. Now, this has been a very helpful situation for us. And along with that, we have individuals who work in our community to help provide furniture, help provide food, help provide assistance, so that the veteran can be successful. The key is not just getting them off the street, but keeping them off the street and housed.
I think that's a really important point, keeping people off the street. Mr. Love, can you tell us, how do people connect with your organization, the VA system, Cloudbreak, the different organizations are out there where they can get help?
So, yeah, that's a very good question and very important information. One way that folks can help veterans or get engaged, one is if there's a local VA medical center within their community, to get that veteran connected with that local VA medical center. If that's not a possibility, there's a 24/7 phone number, 1-877-424-3838. And that is the Homeless Veterans Call Center, where folks, if they know a veteran who is at imminent risk of homelessness or who is homeless, they can call that line. You can also connect the NCHV. You can go to their website at nchv.org, where they have a lot of resources. And Mr. Cooper, Cloudbreak is in about 11 communities across the country. So you can get those folks connected there as well. And a number of partners around the country who are working with us to help veterans either stay off the street, or if they have a housing crisis, to get back into housing as quickly as possible.
Ms. Monet, one thing I've been looking at too and reading about is that it's a particularly difficult time for women with families with kids to be homeless. What's the challenge in trying to get families off the street, particularly women, and how do they feel safe in these types of shelters and places that you have for them?
Well, I think women veterans tend to face challenges within the VA system writ large because it's a system that wasn't necessarily set up to meet their needs and is still kind of playing catch up. And I don't think that that's something unique to VA's homeless programs necessarily, but I do think that the challenges sometimes can be more acute when you're thinking about how you find living quarters for a woman veteran and what that looks like if the veteran wants to, for example, stay in transitional housing. There have been some really big legislative changes that have been made to allow organizations that accept VA grants to serve dependents, like minor dependents of veterans, whether they're women or men. There are also other programs like SSVS and HUD-VASH that are more community-based, where you're actually getting either a voucher or a shorter-term subsidy to rent a property in your community, like to rent an apartment. And so I think those two programs are pretty crucial when you're looking at the population of women veterans. I mean, that said, I do think that there's probably a lot more room for us to really grow and integrate a better response that's, a little bit more holistic, right, that meets the needs of women when you're thinking about children or, for example, ITV or other things that, may be more prevalent in a young woman or in the population of younger women, I guess, than it is in the general population that VA has tended to serve with its homeless program.
Okay. So, Mr. Lowe, can you tell a little bit more about what do these facilities look like? Are they, so tell me the difference between transitional housing, permanent housing. Are they facilities or like big buildings, or is it more like Section 8? How do these different programs work? What do they look and feel like?
Well, to answer your first question is yes, there are multiple projects and so forth that people provide either permanent housing or transitional housing. So transitional housing could even look like an apartment complex, or it can be a single facility. And that the role of transitional housing is to help that veteran who is at a point where they want to transition. They're not quite, they've made the choice that they want to get into a program before they take the step into permanent housing. These programs usually provide intensive services, and the veteran can stay there for up to 2 years before transitioning to a permanent facility. Whereas permanent housing, again, it could be a single facility, or it could be what we call scattered site, meaning that it could be across the community. You can do that. They can get into these permanent units with a voucher, where the voucher would pay can pay up to 90% of their rent. It's usually about 70%, and the veteran would pay anywhere from 10 to 30%. Or a community developer could design some permanent housing units that would be a single site facility. The veteran can utilize one of our programs, for example, if they have recently become homeless, like support services for veterans' families, or SSVF, to get in, and that's kind of a lighter touch where they don't have a full voucher, but this veteran can generally get into the unit with the deposit up to roughly, I think, about 5 months rent, and take that and take it from there, after being helped to secure resources, jobs, and the like. So I hope that answered your question in terms of the differences between the two. They come in all shapes, sizes, and colors of sort. And the whole idea behind it is that it is the veteran's choice when working with them of what he or she may need to help them to exit homelessness.
Okay. Now, Ralph, one thing I think about, I think of homelessness, I always think of food insecurity along with that. What are some of the programs that you use to address food insecurity? Is that something that's part of these programs?
And you're saying security, meaning
Like people that don't have food.
safety?
Food security,
Oh.
food insecurity. That's what I'm talking about.
Food security. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, of course, at Travis Street Plaza and Midtown Terrace, those are the two facilities. One is 287 units, the other is 192 that we have in Houston. Part of our facility is a grant per diem program run by U.S. Vets, in which they feed their population 3 meals a day. And we right now, because COVID has really done a number on some of the efforts, we're trying right now to get back Meals on Wheels, which will serve any veteran or any resident over 65 years of age. So that's a hot meal. That's a real good thing. The VA has also jumped in the picture with having certain days which they go out and bring back vegetables and fruits and all canned goods, and all kinds of food assistance. Also, there are food programs in the community which veterans can access. Of course, we all are trying to get our veterans, especially in permanent housing, those who are able-bodied, to get a job and be able to earn enough money to purchase their own food and be able to be an independent, totally independent living situation. However, for those who can't, there are those programs that I just mentioned.
So that's important then, Ms. Monet. So then you have people that are younger who have different needs and people that are older. You have people that are disabled. So you have different programs to address all of these different needs. What's the most challenging situation you run into?
So I've got a couple. I think the biggest one in the back of my head, honestly, is sex offender housing and trying to find, landlords that will help the sex offender move on and somewhere that they can afford. I think the next challenge, that is something that we're starting to see a little bit more with the homeless population aging a little bit, and some folks even struggling with post-COVID issues, is housing people or people who are newly homeless but have oxygen tanks and need somewhere to go tonight. And I feel like we've struggled with a few of those. I mean, my team on our hotline this week has had 3, interestingly enough. And I think that's an interesting challenge that I hadn't really thought about as a post-COVID thing, but could be something that crops up a little more.
Wow. So people that have like criminal records or people that have issues with the law or have had issues with the law in the past, I mean, so how do you navigate that? Someone's a sex offender and they're trying to get housing. Is there any sympathy for the homeless veteran, or is that person just completely like an outcast?
I mean, I've got a lot of sympathy for them, but I don't have properties all over the country, right? And so I think there are a couple of key strategies, right? And I think the first thing is looking for local reentry programs to see, what kind of resources are nearby that might help them. And then the other strategy we use that's a little bit backwards is looking at the sex offender registry to see where sex offenders in their community are living and kind of backing that into, like, is there 1 or 2 apartment complexes in the town that maybe are able to house them, and actually kind of calling those complexes, right, to see, hey, do you have any vacancies? We've got this person on our hotline who's had a voucher for, a little while, or maybe doesn't have a voucher but has some assistance and is looking for something. So it's not easy.
In Houston, we are definitely more lenient with some offenders. Now, like Ms. Monet said, the sex offender, there are two other categories which could be denied housing. That's a person convicted of arson and a person convicted of terroristic threat. So anybody else that has a criminal record, however, has not been evicted in a certain length of time, but has been able to pay their rent and move forward. We're more lenient with those folks, and we will house people who have some justice-related histories, and also we like Ms. Monet said, we still try to seek housing for a veteran regardless of what the circumstances are. If we don't provide that housing ourselves, we do make a big effort to find facilities that will house them.
And it seems like to me, if you have someone who's had a troubled past, whether it be domestic violence or sexual abuse or anything like that, as an offender, it'd be better to get them off of the street and put them someplace where you can actually monitor those people and keep them away from hurting the general public. If they can get treatment or get some kind of counseling in order to make sure they're not a threat to society. When you have somebody roaming the streets that has the mentality of being an offender, to me, that's more dangerous than actually having them someplace where they're being monitored. Does that make sense, Mr. Love? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I would agree that the idea is, people are known to perform better in life if they have a stable place to stay, first and foremost. And secondly, I think that if you know where that individual is, it does make the community safer. I think one thing we also have to address with that, what makes it also very difficult, is that every state and communities have laws on the books that have these barriers, if you will, in terms of, say, if there's vacant housing available and they are open, but they're right across the street from the school, and so forth. And some states won't allow someone with that history to stay there. Same will go for if there is already a sex offender or two that are staying in that building. They could have only so many within a given set. So there are some other barriers that we have to face outside of landlords being able to rent to them, but there are some policy issues that would have to be addressed to kind of open that door in terms of ensuring those folks off the street, and then be able to convince the public that it is a public safety issue to make sure these individuals have housing and you can lay eyes on them, for lack of a better term.
Now, Anthony and Kathryn, you might be better to answer this question. About 5 minutes left, but so people that are landlords or people that are mom and pop property owners that have units to rent, can they get how do they get involved with the VA system, your systems and your programs to provide housing to people that can't afford it, veterans and things like that? Are there like Section 8 type programs where the landlord can get incentive or get payment on behalf of a veteran? How does that work?
So I can go first. So we have this program called HUD-VASH. It's Housing Urban Development, Veteran Affairs Supportive Housing. And if you are a landlord that's interested in that program, you can connect with the VA so that they'll know that you are available. And so when they have veterans to refer out, your property can be put on there. But one of the things is that to be a voucher recipient, your property does have to pass inspection, which is an essential component of providing the housing. They definitely would have to meet housing quality standards. So that would be part of what would go into that landlord being able to accept these vouchers. At the same time, they can also, work with the VA again. There are programs out there that are what we call our SSVF, or Supportive Services Veteran Family Providers. And you can go to our website at va.gov/homeless to find out about those programs within your community, those SSVF programs in your community, and let them know that you're interested in providing housing for veterans who are seeking to exit homelessness. So those are a couple of ways for that to happen in terms of that. But also, I would implore those landlords, if you are, please accept those HUD-VASH vouchers that the veterans bring forward to come into your housing.
So let me ask this other question now. So what are some of the drawbacks, or what are landlords afraid of as far as not accepting these vouchers?
So part of it is not necessarily fear, but when you're in a housing market where you have folks out there who are willing to pay far above the market rate, it's hard for the voucher to compete with that. And so I wouldn't say that it's so much fear as it is the market. So one of the things that we do, some communities do, is that they offer incentives for what I would call for those apartments to take veterans into their properties. But we also say there are some other benefits for the landlord. I mean, with the HUD-VASH voucher, it's a reliable income. So you have a tenant that the rent's going to be paid, and you also have support from the VA, because the case management from VA will support those individuals within your unit. They are your intermediary, if you will, if that is something that's happening. And last but not least, you get the opportunity to serve someone who served. Landlords, renting to veterans, you can feel proud of that decision. And you can also help to support, with this pandemic, you can help to support community health concerns, ensuring that those veterans are safe and have a stable place to stay.
Anthony Love, he's a senior advisor and the director of community engagement for the Department of Veterans Affairs and Veterans Health Care Administration Homeless Program. Ralph Cooper, community and residential veteran services coordinator, Cloudbreak Houston LLC, and co-founder of the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. And last but not least, Kathryn Monet, chief executive officer of the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.